Brilliant. Yeah, no mean feat to talk about strategy this afternoon. So I thought I'd put the airbrushed photo of me from 10 years ago, like Chris, because that's always good, and put some really youthful emojis on to make me look young than I already do. But this is me, so I'm Camilla. I've worked at BDA for about 5 years now. I'm head of marketing strategy at BDA. And a little bit of housekeeping first before I start my presentation. Do not expect puppies and cute things. No. Do not expect any fancy photoshopping. It's not going to happen. Instead, I'm going to be talking about what is strategy and give you some tools and give you a process to follow in order to create some good strategy, hopefully. Now, I want you to think in a little bit of a different way about strategy. I can't give you a golden answer on what it will look like. As mentioned before, it all depends on so many different things and so many different threads, what your industry is, where you are, your demographics that you're after, etc. So just to start, really, the word strategy comes from strategos, which is Greek, which I didn't know, and it's all about winning against the competitors. It means the art of the general. So have that in your mind when we go through this presentation. So it's about application of strength over weakness, and that is strategy in a nutshell. If we look at this great story of David and Goliath, it's a story of bravery, and it's about spotting that opportunity and turning a weakness into a strength that gives this story its bite. So what we're saying here is see what others do not see. When you look at this on face value, you have little tiny David. He's very brave and very nimble, but he's tiny. He hasn't got much of a chance, never been in a fight before. You've got almighty Goliath. He's unbelievably strong. He's really big. What are his weaknesses? Well, we don't know. We don't know what his weaknesses are until we're there. Turns out his weakness was he didn't have any armour here, and one slingshot straight in the sweet spot here, and that was the end of Goliath. So it's about seeing what others do not see and staying ahead, and it's the art of battling giants. It's quite a nice way to put it. Or breaking conventional wisdom. And we've seen some examples today of breaking conventional wisdom. And it's breaking accepted theory and belief. That's the sweet spot in strategy. And I have a few examples I personally really love. You've probably seen a couple of them already, sorry, but they're good examples for a reason. The first one, which some of you may have heard of, is WeWork. I love WeWork. Hands up who's been to WeWork? Perfect. So WeWork is basically, what they did is they innovated and they rent from landlords big office spaces and they transform them into a communal space, and then you and I, freelancers, small businesses, can pay a monthly fee to go and work in their communal offices, which is super cool. Around the world, from New York to, they've got a couple in London. I was in one in London last month. It's fantastic. You've got your breakout rooms. It looks really cool. People can bring their dogs, and it's just very artsy-fartsy and very cool. Now, they've really disrupted that office space globally. So it's more the communal space. It's about creating a communal space, and they're now worth £13 billion. So there's a really good example for the need of mobile working, spotting that opportunity, and then going in with something different. The other one, which you've all heard of, is Airbnb. I love Airbnb. So that started in San Francisco, and it was two guys who had 3 airbeds, and they put them up on their sitting room floor while there was a big conference going on, and they charged. And then they thought, oh God, you know, that's a really good opportunity there. There might be something in this. Nobody's really doing that, and it's about collaborative consumption. But it's about sharing space again, so you can stay in a castle, a boat, a tree house, whatever you like, and they're now worth £22 billion. They're now doing Airbnb experiences, so you can go to London and you can experience pottery, art, whatever you want. You can go to Rio, do some food tasting. So they're really adapting, and they're really adapting to the change really well. So these are disruptors. They're not copying anybody. It's so easy for us all to look in this industry at our competitors and copy them and try and do a slightly better version of what they're doing because it's safe. And my message to you today is to try and be a little bit brave. Don't copy, and try and see what no one else sees. So there's a couple of guys here that, Goliath, I guess, who died. Kodak, we all know, they invented the roll film back in 1884, I think it was. Brilliant for their time, really well known, booming industry, business was great, and then slowly digital came in. And they were they loved their roll film so much they didn't want to change, because if they did go digital, roll film would be dead. So ironically, they died in 2012. They became bankrupt because they just didn't adjust to that change. And by that point, their infrastructure was so large, for them to backtrack. God, I thought it was my glass of water. For them to backtrack, drama. No, for them to backtrack would have cost them a fortune, and they simply couldn't do it. They were too Goliathy by that point. They couldn't change. Another one is tie rack. I don't know if anyone remembers tie rack, but there was a piece of consumer insight that said men buy ties when they buy their shirts, but they didn't stock shirts. They carried on with their ties, so men would have to go out of their way to go to tie rack to buy a shirt, a tie, and then go somewhere else to buy a shirt. They didn't listen to that bit of insight, so they died. Same story. If you look at Argos, I love Argos. 3 years ago, I thought they were crap. And I like them because in 2012, they reinvented themselves. So they were nearly on the way out, and they did a whole digital transformation. They looked at the likes of Amazon, who can do next day prime delivery, and they went, we're going to fast track and we're going to deliver the same day. That's all they needed to do, really. So now, they spotted that weakness, they went for it, and now they're fantastic. So they've had a massive, massive turnaround. So that's a Goliath that's been revived. So, what does strategy need to be? So I'm going to give you a few of my tips of what strategy needs to be. And they're pretty straightforward. The first thing strategy needs to be successful is focused. Focus on 1 or 2 objectives. We all have this habit, we've all got compliance departments, we have this habit of having lots of different objectives that we need to squeeze into that strategy. It won't work. You need 1 or 2 objectives within your strategy. Simple, this is another funny one. So a hallmark of true expertise is making complex understandable. We all use buzzwords, and they're terrible, and all they are is a sprinkling of crap words that makes things look more top level and more knowledgeable than we actually need to be. So one of the biggest things is keeping things simple as you can. Another one is insight. I'm a big advocate of insights. A few companies will go, oh, do we have to do this bit? Can't we just go on to the tactics? No, insights is the most important bit because it will inform your strategy. So don't make assumptions, get true facts. We talked earlier about Facebook demographics, all the details that you can get. If you have Facebook advertising, you've got all that data there for you. You can stick a pixel within your website so that you can understand who is going to your website and where they're clicking. So are they married? Do they have kids? Where do they live? All that information you've got, you just need to extrapolate that data and look at those insights to help inform your strategy. I'll go on to that in a minute. Make it actionable, so create teams to coordinate your actions, that's key, and create a really focused outcome. Don't just let it wilt on the vine and die. And then agile, adapt to change. It's going to happen. You need to have a very quick direction of thinking and keep it really, really agile. What is strategy? Definitely not. As I mentioned before, fluff, it's not fluff. Fluff is pretending to be expertise. It's the illusion of high-level thinking. Keep it really simple. Use normal words. Undefined. When a challenge is not defined, you can't create a strategy if you haven't defined your challenge. It's that simple. Goals. Don't mistake goals for strategy. So we see this quite a lot. Well, our goal is to increase followers by, look, that's not a strategy. That's just a nice goal as part of a bigger forest. It's a tree instead of a forest. Quite a simple analogy. And then bad objectives. So strategic objectives that are bad fail to address issues. Okay, so just in order to start to think of it differently, I'm going to share with you some tools and methodology, and here are my top 5. So we do actually run an all-day session, so I'm trying to squeeze this in to 15 minutes. But if you follow these steps in the way of your thinking with your groups, you should gain some really valuable stuff from this. So the step 1 is to see. So we mentioned before about defining your problem. What is your problem? That's step 1. So what tools can you do? The first thing you can do is understand your audience. We've touched on that already today. So who do you want to talk to? How does that person think? And what does that person really need? What is valuable to that person? Once you know that, you can create better content for them. Otherwise, you're going in a little bit blind. So the more you know, the better. Some people find this tedious, but it really is mandatory to do this up front. Another one is unearth your problems. Somebody mentions before about drawing problems down, drawing things down rather than articulating or writing. We use something that's like a big giant doodle. So we sit there with big pieces of paper, we draw a problem of a client. And it's amazing how many times you can extract information that you hadn't thought of when you're drawing it down. So there's another good tip. And it's a good way to tackle a focused set of actions as well. So go through that with your team and discuss. Another one is interrogate the problem. So Kipling's 5 W's. What is the problem? Why is the problem? When is the problem? How is the problem? And who is the problem? So that really starts that creative process. And leave no stone unturned in that section. And then the final one within the C section is C-section. You know what I mean? Define one central statement. So one theme, one issue. So after all of this and all this stuff that you've done, what's the one statement or the challenge that you want to address from your problem? And there's your key to move on to the next step, which is seek. Okay, so you've got your problem statement, you understand what you're doing. Now you need to identify the key insights that will inform that strategy. SWOT analysis. Dig that one out from my CIM marketing course. But it is very good. It's an old, but it's a goodie. So it puts things in a slightly fresh perspective. It reveals new advantages, potentially, and opportunities, whether that's against yourself or against your competitors. So again, think of that David and Goliath. This is where these ideas start popping out. Another one is empathy mapping. Has anyone ever done an empathy map before? Okay. Claire, yeah, because I think we did that with you, didn't we? And an empathy map is really straightforward and it's really good. It's really valuable. So all you've got is you're thinking of your customer, again, no jargon, and you're thinking, what does my customer think and feel? What really counts to them? What are their worries? What are their aspirations? What do they want to hear? So what are their friends saying? What's their boss saying? What are their influencers saying? And what are they hearing? What do they see? What's their environment? Who are their friends? What does the market offer to them currently that they're seeing that isn't your offering? What do they say and do? So their behaviour towards other brands, for example. And 2 big ones here. What's their pain? What are their fears, their frustrations, and any obstacles that they have in their way to purchase, for example? And again, what does good look to? What does good look like to them? What are their measures of success? And once you've got those, you've got a really clear picture of your audience. And you might find that you might want to do an empathy map on 5 types of your audience. You might have 5 groups of audience segmentation within your business. And just sit and go through it. I've got some templates I can send to you guys, so just pop me an email if you'd be interested in that. But it's a great group session to do. So we're still in that seek stage, and I love this one. Find influential super facts. So once you've gone through all your insights, some of these might pop up. These are bits of powerful info that really inform your strategy. And you look at them and think, shit, that's really important. That changes the game. So it could be 80% of our audience are female, because we've looked at all our taggings and we go, yeah, okay. Or 23% of our online close sales are returned. It's those stats that make you stop and go, okay, that's quite huge. We should do something to address that. Could be a game changer in how you approach your strategy. Okay, so you've got all this stuff, you've got all this data, you've got all these insights, you've got everything going on. It's a bit intense. You need to be able to say no to a wide variety of actions. You can't do everything in a one strategy piece. Otherwise it's too complex. So the next step after you've got all this good stuff is to simplify and distill it right down. There's a couple of tricks to do this I want to share with you. So the first one is the 6-word story. You've heard of this one, I'm sure. It's very powerful. For sale, baby shoes, never worn. Gives me goosebumps every time. But that is an incredible story within 6 words. It's an example of shrinking something down that's still powerful but gets across the gist that you need to get across. So that's a nice methodology to use. And then after you've done that, take it down further still. Can you produce your strategy in 1 word? Things like examples that we've had recently, trust, awareness, scale, perception, game-changing. Just think about if you were to do one, say you lost your strategy, you lost your laptop, and you had to recreate 1 slide with your strategy on, what would that slide look like? Just make it really simple. You don't need all that insight section. Okay, step 4, scheme. This is the bit that everybody jumps to because it's a fun bit. It's the bit where we look at tactics, and we start to create some good creative, and it's video, and it's fun, and it's social, and it's... So Don't skip to this part, obviously, but you cannot do this properly unless you're informed. So, for example, if your Superfax told you that most of your audience were baby boomer generation, you'd market them in a different way than you would if it was Generation X, for example. You'd use a bit more Facebook and maybe a little bit more YouTube, etc. So you cannot skip to this stage, otherwise you're going in completely blind. So, you know, if we go on to some different ways of thinking, and I'll use the Disney one as well here. So once you've got your ideas and you've got your tactics, before that, think about different modes of thinking. So think factual. What data have I got that we saw before that I can pull on? What information do I have to start creating some of those tactics? So for example, we know that our audience will be on Facebook. Okay, well, let's do some Facebook advertising to our custom audience, for example. Then look at emotional. So add to the pot, what does your gut say? Where does your gut say there's a gap that you need to fill within your business? That's really powerful. Normally your gut is right, and you always have that feeling of, this doesn't feel right, or go with your gut. And then go creative. Go Lee Williams and go mental. Go freewheel, do what you want, and get all those pots together. Now, one thing that Disney did, and I really like this, is he used to have 3 rooms at Disney. And he'd have a dreamer room, he'd have a realist room, and he'd have an analyst room. So in the dreamer room, we'd do whatever we liked. We'd come up with those brilliant ideas, and they're all wonderful. And then it would go, brilliant, these are our top ideas from the dreamer room. Then we're going to take them to our realist room. And in our realist room, it's, could this really happen? Is this a silly idea? What would happen if we did this instead? And we're starting to put a bit of meat on those bones. And then the analyst room is like the cutting shop floor. It's like, either it dies or it doesn't. But it's a really nice process to take a team through as well. And I know companies that have physically had 3 rooms that they've done this within. So look at the Walt Disney analogy, because it's really great. Okay, once we have these ideas, so you've selected all your tactics together, it's time to build on them. So involve as many different personality types into this group as you possibly can. Think of your dreamers, your realists, and so on, and build on your ideas. So as an agency, what we like to do is get to this point and then bring clients in, because we've got 7 or 8 pieces of tactics or ideas or creative or what have you, and it's all about putting the meat on the bones and fleshing out together. Which is great for your teams because they feel like they've had buy-in, they feel like they've been throughout the whole process with you, which is great because it means they're behind your strategy, and that is also key with strategy. You need your teams to be behind you and to follow that journey with you in order for them to believe in it. Okay, this one is also really important. I know that I've said that about every single slide, that it's really important, but this is quite important. So step 5, last step, is season. Keep the strategy and tactics informed. We see quite a few times that a company will get a strategy together and tactics together, and then it will sit there for 3 months and just wilt, as I said before, and it's in danger of dying, because in that time that you've looked at those insights, the environment has changed, potentially. So it might not be Christmas anymore, it might not be a hot topic of conversation about Brexit anymore, it might not be cybercrime, might not be trending. It might be a completely different space within those 3 months. So it's so important that you keep your strategy and your tactics really agile. So by agility, I mean working together really quickly, collaborating with that team, getting that team on board, and doing the simplest things that work. Learn fast. Fail fast as well, of course, but learn what you're doing, learn what's working. Track your performance and your KPIs. Don't just put a campaign out and go, oh, well, that didn't really work after about a month. Let's try another campaign. It's about tracking your performance, seeing what's working well, turning up what is, dialing down what doesn't, and moving on quickly and taking your learnings. So looking at your KPIs and your objectives and how you're performing against those. And then improve, as mentioned. So your tactics and strategy based on the performance, tweak them. Like the example that we saw with the pork scratchings. You've got this A/B testing, cut off B, I think it was. What other versions can you do of A? How can you make that even better to get that conversion rate higher and that click-through percentage higher as well? Okay, so just to recap the steps. Mine's quite a short presentation, I just realised. I think it's about 16 minutes, so you'll be happy. The first one is C, so what is the problem? Seek, find your insights, simplify your strategy, make it as simple as possible. Scheme, create your tactics, season, keep things fresh with your tactics as well as your team. And I want to finish on a quote as well from a chap called Carl von Clausewitz, and he wrote the book on war. So just going back to that military analogy. And he says, pursue one decisive aim with force and determination. So it's basically saying, don't choose that broad strategy. Apply power to this greatest effect. And I think we're in a world of 360 marketing and lots of touch points. And I guess I'm saying to you, think like a general. Do not a little of everything, but a lot of a little. Put the force behind where it needs to be. Otherwise, you won't have any results and it will be washed out. So that's why strategy is so key and important. And it takes bravery to be different, and it's just not doing what everyone else is doing. So be more David, I guess, is the outcome from this. Be more David Knowles. Be more David Goliath. And that's it. So thank you. If there's any questions, happy to answer some. Or you can email me.
Thank you, Camilla. Does anybody have any questions for Camilla? No. They can email. Oh, there is one. Matt, at the back there. Shall I pass you the microphone?
That creative process you mentioned is really interesting, because we do a similar kind of thing where we try and be quite brutal with each other over ideas.
Yeah.
And like, how do you manage that with your team? So when you're going through these ideas and saying, actually, that's not great.
Yeah, well, we actually call them killing puppies. So we try not to kill any puppies. Sorry, the analogy. It is actually true. Sorry, Paul. So what we do is we have brainstorms and we get lots of different people involved, and any idea goes up on the board. Any idea. And we have some ridiculous ones, we have some far out ones, but any idea goes on the board. And what you'll find is once you come to seasoning those ideas, you might have other people that build on it. So take that, what could be an idea that doesn't quite work or doesn't quite fit, but you'll be amazed how you can build on it through different minds and different perspectives to make something that actually might work. And when I was talking about that gut reaction, I've heard of so many campaigns that have been absolutely brilliant and viral, and it all came from just something, a flippant comment said out of laughter at the end of a brainstorm with a client, like, oh, wouldn't it be great if they did this? And that's what the amazing campaign has been.
That meerkat's got to have been a joke in a pub.
Of course it has.
Guaranteed.
Of course it has. And there was another one, I can't think of it right now. There was another one recently. I shared it with the group. It's gone from my mind. But they literally made a joke out of what the clients were doing at the time. I think it was for the insurance industry. I can't quite remember what it was. I'll share it on Twitter. But yeah, just don't kill any ideas, because they might actually be quite good ones.
Cool. Thank you.
Any more for any more? Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Camilla.